Okay, so get this right. Today we're looking into this case, and it's really messed up, honestly. It's the exorcism of Kristy Bamu. This young guy just visited family in London for Christmas, ends up dead.
Yeah.
And it's all because of this thing called kindogi, which, like, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's basically witchcraft or, like, spiritual possession. It's from the Lingala language, which is spoken in parts of Central Africa.
Right. Kindoki's really important to understand. If you want to wrap your head around what happened here, it's not like just a general belief in witchcraft. It's like this whole system, these beliefs about how spirits can influence you, how they can curse you, and how people can, like, actually mess with the spirit world.
So picture this, December 2010, Kristy Bamu, he's from the Democratic Republic of the Congo originally. He goes to London to visit his sister, Magali, for the holidays. You know, Christmas with family, everyone's excited, right?
Yeah.
And then, bam, this crazy thing happens.
It all starts with Magali's partner, Garrick Bikubi. This guy, he gets it in his head that Kristy and two of his sisters, they're practicing Kindoki. Like, he's convinced they're bringing bad luck on the whole family.
Wow. So, okay, I mean, you hear about people being accused of witchcraft sometimes, especially in, like, certain cultures. But, like, what happens next is just...
intense.
Yeah, intense is one word for it. Bikubi, he decides he's going to perform an exorcism on Kristy and his sisters.
Yeah.
It's like, how can someone think they're helping by hurting someone else, you know?
This is where it gets really interesting from, like, a psychological perspective. Bikubi and even Magali, to a point, they were living in this completely different reality, shaped by their culture, and maybe, I don't know, not really exposed to other ways of thinking. They were convinced, absolutely convinced, that they were fighting evil, that what they were doing was, like, saving Kristy's soul.
Right.
It's wild.
And we're not talking about a quick little ritual, something that's exorcism. It goes on for days, and the things they did, it's just, it's awful.
Truly horrible. Metal bars, wooden planks, even a hammer. They beat these kids, and they forced them to fast, like not eat for days, and made them take these freezing cold baths, all to, you know, supposedly get rid of these evil spirits.
Man, I can't even imagine what Kristy must have been going through. Stuck in this nightmare with people he should be able to trust, people who are supposed to love him. Just awful.
Yeah, the trauma, especially for someone so young, just unimaginable.
I mean, it's just crazy to think that they couldn't see, like, the damage they were doing. This wasn't about evil spirits. It was just hurting kids, you know?
Yeah, and that's a really important point. We've been talking about Kindoki, right, as this belief system, but it's, like, crucial to see how beliefs, even ones that come from your culture, can get twisted, you know, and lead to, like, really horrible things. Like, in this case, Bikubi's belief in Kindoki, it became something dangerous, something that let him justify doing these awful things.
It's like he tricked himself, right? Convinced himself that he was doing good even though he was hurting everyone.
Exactly. And this is where I think groupthink comes in. You get this tight-knit community. They all believe the same thing. It's like super hard for anyone to question it, even when they see things that don't add up. The pressure to fit in, to not get kicked out of the group, it's powerful.
So even if someone in that house, you know, maybe had doubts, thought something was wrong, they might have been too scared to say anything, didn't want to go against everyone else.
Exactly. And that's what makes these cases so, like, complex, right? We have to respect cultural beliefs, but we also have to protect people from getting hurt, even when it's their own community that's, like, causing the harm.
Yeah, it's a tough line to walk. But back to Kristy, as this, like, exorcism thing kept going, he was getting worse and worse. Injuries, exhaustion, dehydrated. I mean, any normal person would have seen that and gotten help, right?
But they didn't. They just kept at it, trying to, like, get rid of these made-up spirits. And tragically, it was on Christmas Day, Kristy, he died. The autopsy showed just how bad it was. Over 130 injuries on this kid. It's awful.
Just heartbreaking. A teenager visiting family for Christmas ends up dead because of this, like, warped belief system.
The medical evidence was, like, totally clear. Deep cuts, signs of hypothermia. His body just couldn't take it anymore. It was abuse, plain and simple, and it killed him.
So then the legal system had to deal with this whole mess. In 2012, Bikubi and Magali Bamu, they went on trial for murder.
And this is where it gets interesting, legally speaking. The defense actually argued that, okay, yeah, what they did was extreme, but it came from their culture. Like, it should be seen in that context. And that raised this whole question about how the law should handle these cases where cultural practices clash with, what's considered right and wrong legally and ethically nowadays.
Man, that trial must be so tough for everyone involved, especially Kristy's family, having to go through all of that again and face the people who, killed him.
Absolutely. And the jury, they had to really weigh the evidence, consider the culture, but also the brutality of what actually happened.
And in the end, they found both Bakubi and Bamu guilty of murder.
Yeah, and they were both sentenced to life in prison. Basically, the court said, look, no matter your culture or beliefs, what you did was so far beyond the line, you deserve the most serious punishment.
So at least there was some justice for Kristy, even though, nothing can bring him back.
Yeah. But this case leaves us with a lot to think about, a lot to unpack. Culture, belief, individual responsibility. It's easy to, blame the people who did it and move on, but I think there's more to it, deeper lessons for all of us.
You're totally right. I mean, this whole thing just makes you, look at yourself and think, man, could something like this happen closer to home? And it really shows how dangerous it is when people just blindly follow, superstition and stuff, even in families that seem totally normal. It's scary.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're, talking about this. It's not about pointing fingers or anything. It's about, making people more aware so we can all be on the lookout.
Right, right.
I think what's important here is, this Kristy Bamu case, it's not a one-off thing. It makes us look at this bigger problem of what happens when the things people believe, from their culture, bump up against, the laws and ethics we have today. We live in this big mix of cultures, and it's so important to find that, that balance. How do we respect different cultures, but also make sure everyone is safe? It's tricky.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, some people might say that, if you really respect a culture, you shouldn't interfere, even if some of their practices seem, I don't know, messed up or dangerous. But then how do we protect people, especially kids, from getting hurt? Where do we draw the line?
It's a tough one. There's no easy answers. But I think one thing we can learn from this case is how important it is to think for ourselves. We can't just accept any belief system, even if it's, a big part of our culture. Got to question things, or analyze them. Think about what might happen if people really believe them.
And it's really important to remember that even in close communities, people can be in danger. When everyone's so sure about what they believe, it's hard for someone to break away, even when they're in trouble. There's that pressure, right? To fit in, to not question anything, even if it's hurting you.
Exactly. And that's why we all need to, be aware that bad things can happen anywhere. You can't just say, oh, that won't happen here or not in my family. We got to pay attention to what's going on around us, what people believe, what they do, even in our own circles.
So it's not about being suspicious of everyone or assuming the worst, right? It's about being informed and being willing to speak up if something seems off.
Exactly. And knowing the signs of abuse, it's not always super obvious, but there are these little things, changes in how people act, or maybe they're always by themselves. That could mean something's wrong.
And if we do see something that worries us, we got to do something, right? Ask questions, challenge it, get help if we need to. We can't just ignore it and hope it goes away. Because like we saw with Kristy, staying silent can have really bad consequences.
Yeah, this whole deep dive into Kristy Bamu's story, it should be a wake-up call for all of us. It shows that, yeah, we should be sensitive to different cultures, but not if it means someone's going to get hurt. The next time you hear about some belief system that sounds strange, maybe even dangerous, remember Kristy. Ask yourself, where's the line? When does respecting someone's culture stop? And protecting people, especially those who can't protect themselves, start. Because sometimes the most important thing we can do is speak out and say, hey, this isn't right.
And on that note, I think that's a good place to wrap things up. This is heavy stuff, folks, but it's so important to talk about.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Stay safe out there and keep those critical thinking caps on. We'll catch you in the next one.